Welcome back again, and in the series of podcast on philosophy, we are here again with a new philosophy, and the philosophy is all about Dvaita. In the last podcast, we talked about Advaita, and this time we are going to talk about Dvaita. And this particular philosophy gives is very much relevant, especially in today's time. And we are going to unravel all those aspects and the aspects which are really important, especially when it comes to living our life to the fullest and knowing ourselves, because what's happening in this world, that we are just going on learning the things, but we have failed to learn about ourselves. And these philosophies are aimed at knowing ourselves to the fullest and knowing ourselves inside out. So before I start speaking on the same, I would like Robin to start the conversation and say something about the same. Over to you.
Okay, so we first of all, good evening and good evening to you and good evening to all my audience. Okay, so we have had a lot of discussions. I mean, in our previous videos, and we have covered up some important philosophies. We have covered, Western philosophies, and we also, went through Advaita, which is so important for many reasons, as we have already discussed. So people who are willing to watch what Advaita is all about, they can go back and search the very last video we have just created,
Yeah.
right? And now we have a very whole new fresh discussions on Advaita philosophies. It's a part of Hindu religions, right? So Hindus, you can say, authority in some other ways, right?
Yeah.
So today we are going to give a good coverage on this Advaita's philosophies, and we will try to know the relevance of Advaita's philosophies in today's context. We will also try to know how it could be, understood as a scientific mode to live the life in such a way where people must be having some sort of feeling of relief or solace, right, out of their very hectic lifestyle, right? So all these things and all these experiences could be well perceived after people understand those nuances of this philosophy. Unfortunately, as we have seen, Western people and specifically people living in other part of the world don't give much priority to these kinds of philosophies, as they don't find it much relevant for them, because it doesn't suit with their overall idea of how they see the entire world and the universe. So for them, science is what is the only medium to understand the entire universe, as well as to understand oneself. But this Dvaita philosophies, as we talked about the Advaita's philosophy previously, and many others which come from the eastern side, which is Hindu philosophy, literally provide us a depth inside about life, about universe, cosmological understanding,
Yeah.
as well as it gives us a number of ways, plenty of ways through which we could really treat ourselves uh, you know uh, under certain circumstances where we feel uh, uh, that we are besieged with anxiety and depressions, and where we find uh, ourselves going under a certain phase of life which appears to be more dejected and full of despondencies, right? So this Advaita philosophy certainly has something for each of us. So we'll try to touch upon all those important aspects of Dvaita's philosophies, and specifically I'll try to cover only that part which I find is relevant, because I'll try to make people understand how, in how many ways they could really utilize this Dvaita's philosophies for their own purposes, for the betterment of life, as all of them, including us, seeking for a certain peaceful state of mind. Dvaita, Advaita, and many other philosophies coming from the eastern side could really play a very significant role in that, and could really help them, assist them, life, assist them to touch that very very desirous or desirable lifestyle that they literally seek for themselves, right? So all we're going to cover in this video. Over to you.
And before I start talking about the philosophy, let me talk about the experience which I had today. While I was there in the office, and I found that the branch manager was not there, right? And I found that the people who were working under him were
Mm.
having a good time, because there was nobody who could inspect, who could supervise them. And this is, where this philosophy of the Dvaita comes. Because here what happens, we are going to talk about the Jiva and
Right.
you can say the God. And we are, basically we are the Jiva, and we are
Right.
talking about, God. If
Mm.
there is no, what happens in Advaita, we find God in ourselves.
Right.
And in Dvaita, there is a difference between these two. I mean, you will have the supreme power in
Mm.
Dvaita philosophy, and that's really important. Why I find it, I found it very intriguing. Why, if I don't have the supreme power, and if I talk about the whole world, everybody in this world, if they don't have any supreme power, I think then they would become, they would not be feeling humbled, actually.
Right.
And when you have the supreme power, then you kind of devote yourself to them. And then and then you can be guided by that supreme force.
Right.
When you are doing everything on your own, and you don't have anybody, or you don't have any force which can guide you, I think you will end up anywhere in the world. And
Right.
you will lose track of your life, you'll lose sight of your goals. And
Mm.
as a result, you won't be able to make the most of this life, and you won't be able to find yourself and know yourself, discover yourself, and discover your destiny, discover your purpose, right? So that's why
Right.
this philosophy comes into play. And where you have the supreme power. And this supreme power is the power which guides you throughout your life, and which lets you know about yourself, right? So Robin, you just talk a bit about the same, and then we'll have a good discussion on the same.
Okay, okay. So let me be very clear on my side, because we basically try to maintain a certain scientific aspect of this philosophy, because we literally want the audience to know the scientific, understanding of this Dvaitas, especially in the 21st century, where we have moved ahead in the technologies and where we have almost touched almost the pinnacle of the technology right now. So it's really hard for a large audience to understand the importance of Dvaita's philosophies, which comes from the eastern side, right? So therefore, we need to, carry or harbor a kind of, scientific temperament throughout the discussions, right? So that we'll try to manage it, because our purpose is to let people know the beauty of this philosophy, right? It's not just limited. So let me begin with a very interesting thing. Whenever it comes to you know Indian philosophy or Eastern philosophy, in particular, uh, the Vedas or the Vedas, whatsoever it is, people often, start presuming that it's all about godliness, it's all about, some divine figures or some divine forces, and which literally gives them a sense that it has no practical essence or
Yeah.
practical, application in the current, scenarios. And therefore their interest in the Indian philosophies somewhere evaporates or dissolves for whatever the reason, but it happens. As I have got many people around the world whom I had discussions with Vedas, they initially didn't show much interest, a passion, a fervor about, because whenever we get to know some new interesting things, we are infused with a certain kind of, optimism, right? A certain kind of, a passion that something new is to be learned, right? But in this case, I found that many people literally don't give much importance, because they often, connect Indian philosophy to some, godly existed things, right? And therefore they don't find it relevant in 21st century. So for this reason, I want to tell them one thing, that whenever we talk about Jiva, whenever we talk about Atman, we have to understand it from the scientific point of view. Until unless we understand it, I think we are not going to encash the treasure that is hidden in that, right? And therefore we have to be very open up, so we have to be first receptive. So this is my first, you can say, a little request or urge from all the audience to come out with a little receptiveness in them so that they could understand and grasp the very beauty of this very philosophy. So let's begin with the very first part. Whenever we talk about Dvaitas, it is almost converse to Advaitas. Advaita is often dealing with unification. In how many ways
Yeah.
we are unified with one supreme power.
Yeah.
Whenever we talk about supreme power, especially in the spiritual world, actually it only means, or it only imports one idea, that is that there is something which is beyond our perception. There is something which is beyond our access, which we can only perceive but cannot have a tangible, impression of it, right? And therefore we, credit, we give credit to that for all these things which we are surrounded by. So for example, human can, perform any task, but there is also a limitation of
Yeah.
human's ability, right? That human cannot, produce a soil. It's impossible for him. Human cannot produce, H2O water. It can produce light from the water, but to produce water naturally it's impossible. It's not in the hand of the humans, right? So there are
Hmm.
certain natural powers which are right to us from some high divinity as a blessing to all of us. And that is the point, that is the thing, the object we call often as a supreme power, right? So nothing is in regulation, nothing is in control. If we try to see it at a larger, scale. For example, the classic example of it, recently we uh, faced COVID-19. I mean, it was only hope in the minds of the people who literally were seeking for some good results to come out, right? Something could happen, right? And they could save all the people, right? So there was no certain kind of preparation done beforehand. There was nothing such as expected there's something like to happen, right? But all of these things happen all of a sudden, right? So there are many things which are not controlled by the human's mind, brains, or physicalities in any kind or in any way. And whatever is not governed by human possibly is governed by something else. So this something else is often, notified or expositioned as a supreme leader. That's it. You can call it a supreme leader. We Hindus call it God. Some other people call it by different names. If
Natural
you
forces,
go,
or you can say that,
yes,
they can have the names of the gods.
Plotinus,
Yeah.
Western philosopher, calls this kind of event supreme. This kind of event, is something, you can say, um, a creator, right? So this man calls this supreme, entity as a creator. If you go and learn the philosophy of Descartes, he calls it, you can say, a mind, because mind and body are absolutely, different and having a distinction between the two, right?
Hmm.
In fact, Descartes' philosophies is much similar to Dvaita's. We will also discuss about it, right? So this is the first part which I want to make it clear, that whenever we are talking about jiva, whenever we're talking about atman, it is only limiting to a certain source of energy from where we get this energy and we are surviving for it, right? Because the consciousness in us is not the gift, or could be produced by any scientific intervention. That's all we know. Therefore we call it a complete, function of the god or the supreme god, right? Now very important part of the Dvaita's philosophy is that it deals with two things in a sense. It first divides, uh, a particular, universe, you can say, the understanding of universe into parts, or in different pictures or figures, you can say, whatsoever you want to say, you can say. So first it calls as as the body, okay? And the other is known as the atman. The body and the atman are the two things which is defined as, you can say, you know uh, uh, Advaita's, concept, right? Am I audible to you?
Yeah, you are audible.
Okay, so this is the point where the concept is laid down, and the concept is that atman and the body, okay? Atma is something, something is an abstract form,
Yeah.
right? which which cannot be, you can say, touched, which cannot
Which is
be
not at all
tangibly
tangible.
tangible, right? And body is more like a matter,
Yeah.
which has its concrete existence, right?
Yeah.
So we have two things which are the centered uh, part of the discussion of Dvaita. Okay, body and Atman. You can say body and soul, whatsoever it is. But you can define it in two ways. Like, now the next question arises: what is the need to even know about this? And what is the relevance of knowing this in this today's 21st century? I mean, how we could utilize this? Obviously, a common mind comes up with this common question, because we all are seeking some sort of personal interest to be from any other kind of discussions, because if you don't have anything for me, then why I'm going to listen to you, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same thing. People literally demand and expect something, a new knowledgeable stuff, something for them, which they could literally enjoy it, which they could literally practice it, right? So whenever they deal with this two, Atman and the body, they mean to say that Atman represents a certain force which is equal to the God, which is equal to the supreme leader, whatsoever you can say. Like, and the body is something which has a concrete existence which belongs to us. Now, the next question arises as we were talking about what is the need of knowing all these things. See, when we understand body in this way, we are actually trying to accept a few things which are really important for human survival. We all know that when we don't give credit to God for all those you know uh, you know divine things happen to us on this planet, we in other way try to insinuate that we are the God, we are the supreme God, like. And this also means, further means, that we are the one can do all possible things. So it, in some other ways, it is defying one thing, that is human abilities limitations, right? And that is the point this philosophy comes in and teaches us, that whenever you understand this entire system of body as a body concrete, is it what is your limitation only, and not anything else that you can perform out of this particular dimension. In other words, I can say that whenever we understand this Dvaita's philosophy, we have to keep one thing in our mind, and that is that there is a limitation of human's ability. And what is that limitation of human ability? Is to restrict you know yourself on many occasions, as many people don't. Obviously, right now what we are looking at, that people are going and going with their you know uh, madness to do any possible things that they could do in the name of inventions, in the name of
Yeah.
proving their ability and the competency, right? And this particular aspect of human life has literally caused a lot of damage to the entire society, isn't it? So
Yeah.
whenever we understand this Dvaita's philosophies in this way, we are actually trying to tell us that we are limited with certain abilities, and not everything we can perform, right? So this actually gives us a feeling that there is we are nothing more than a common figure. Okay, so it, when we understand and realize it, I mean, personally, if we understand this and realize that we are limited with certain abilities, then at least we are not going to be arrogant with the people. We
Yeah.
are not going to be, you can say, very disregarding in any ways. We will be maintaining certain degree of humility in us, and in this way we can see and experience like what could be the possible scenarios in future in the generations to come, that there'll be a great environment for living for the people, right?
Yes.
In fact, it leads to a certain degree of you know uh, you can say a kindness to be a part of the society, isn't it? And
Yes.
now ask this to ourselves: what is the need of kindness? I mean, for all of us, and to live on this planet, because kindness reflects your cooperation with people. Kindness reflects, your understanding with the people. Kindness also reflects your, your acceptance to others in several ways. in several ways, right? So these are the nuances of these philosophies which are often overlooked. And when we understand this, limitations of humans' ability through Dvaitas in the form of body as a concrete figure, much less than the Atman figure, which is much associated with the divine figure, then we comprehensively understand it, that this is us and this is our ability, and therefore we have to limit ourselves whenever we perform any such task which appears to be very boastful, which is appears to be unkind or unseemly to the entire humanity or of this planet, right? So in this way we at least serve a great lesson, as well as commit to maintain a certain kind of environment in the
Yeah.
society where all people living in a very peaceful state of mind and with a cooperative mindset, right? With you.
Yes, as you said that when we practice this philosophy, this helps us dissolve our ego, and that's the biggest hurdle in a person's life. This can hinder a person's progress if a person becomes egoistic, if a person becomes arrogant, and there is no stopping for the
Mm.
person's ego. Then I think this is going to end the person's progress in person's life. I'm reminded of one incident which actually took place when you must be knowing that and that Big Bang was going, and then the people were trying to know how this whole world was created, and then suddenly what happens? A bird comes and the whole system goes haywire, right? So this shows that. There is some force up there calling the shot,
Right.
and we can never become God ourselves, right? There is a limitation, and we must realize that. And this incident taught us this lesson that there are certain things beyond our reach. There are certain things which we can never do. For example, if I talk about myself, because generally what I do, I talk about things which I've experienced in my life. And to be honest, as people keep saying that we should be trying as much as we can, and eventually we'll succeed, right? And failure happens when a person is not at all prepared. But
Right.
to be honest, when I was trying to clear some of the examinations, I was completely prepared, and I was damn sure that I would be able to clear those examinations. But what would happen when I was going to give it a try? I would get busy, busier no than ever, and I would find no time to prepare for those examinations. And no matter how hard I tried to make time for my studies, but I always failed to make time for my study. And this always reminded me of this particular fact that I was not made, or I was not destined to be what I was trying to be. And so although I was trying, I was leaving no stone unturned. I was doing my damnedest, but
Right.
I couldn't make it a reality, because there is some power, there is some can say force, which always tells us that you have not been created for this particular thing.
Right.
You are meant to do something else. And some other examples I would tell you that. Especially I'm talking about my family, my brother, who was always trying to become a government official, right? But he had a difficult time. He was not able to, he kept trying for almost 5 years, and he couldn't crack even a single exam. See how hard it was for him to accept. He couldn't, he was quite good at his studies. Even he was taking students who were preparing for ND and CDS, and the kind of level these examinations have got. And he was teaching all those students. He was good at maths, he was good at physics, everything, but he couldn't lend himself a government job. And then the vacancies were announced. Only 7 vacancies were there in the whole country, and then he applied for those posts and positions. And then he was accepted. I mean, he cleared the exam when he had no hope. Although he was trying, he was quite hopeful. But there comes a time when you lose all the hopes, and there happens a miracle. And this is what this Dvaita teaches us, that this this makes us humble, because when you think that you've got all the powers, you've got everything in your own hands, I think then you kind of become, very egoist. And if there is no force which makes you humble, I think then there will be no limit. You'll be become unlimited. You'll become, you can say you will not be even drawing any limit for yourself. And this is, what I realized when these are my own personal experiences, and I've observed such things happening in this world, as I talked about this Big Bang kind of experiment which they were doing. Now, I want you to talk about the practical application of Dvaita, helping people dissolving their egos, or no, making them, you can say, or teaching them a lesson that they are doing wrong, or they are going wrong, or they should be, and how it helps us to get back on the track.
Okay, so there are many strong reasons which literally, you know, say and not exaggerate, but literally say that we can control our emotions, we can control our personal, association with people. We can also be well regulated as we literally want, and we can also, take everything in our hands, not to be governed by any external force.
Yes.
So there are many things as a results could be produced by a proper applications of the Dvaita's philosophies, but it requires your sincere, you know, uh, practicing of it on a routine base, and it doesn't, require that one has to be devoted to any god. We don't say that we have to worship a certain kind of god.
Yeah.
Whatsoever in your eyes is a supreme leader, you can also treat him as a supreme leader. It
Yes.
is as simple as that. So there is no such kind of, you can say, a missionary movement, as usually people do, to
Yes.
go other cities and to impose their beliefs and ideas on them and force them to convert themselves into particular kind of religion.
Yeah.
It is not such a requirement here in this case. It only seeks your sincere, attempts and routine efforts for the maximum profits and the maximum benefits, right? So starting with the first, since we are talking about Dvaitas, so we are talking about dualities. Dvaita means dualities.
Pretty, yeah.
Dualities also, mean two things, studies of two things. So in scientific term, as we have discussed, it deals with mind and body. So when science or a scientific, mind comes to describe this entire Dvaitas, he will probably start with, body and mind. He's not going to, start with jivas and atma, because he's a scientific mind. He won't use those
Yeah.
words, because these words are spiritually, elevated, or these are spiritually acknowledged, right? But in the scientific, terminology, it is not given, or given that much importance, right?
Yeah.
So a mind and the body. Okay. Other thing which we have discussed, that the atman in the body, atman in the soul, that is atman in the soul, right? Now the best way to apply it to get the maximum benefits is that first we need to understand what is the actual function of Dvaitas in personal lifestyle. So there are certain principles that it lays down. You can call it doctrines, you can call it principle, you can call it life lessons, right? Whatsoever it is, but you have to understand in this way. So first, it actually deals with the principle or a doctrine of master and disciple, relationship.
Master and
It
it can also be called master and agent relationship.
master and agent, right? You can call it a master or agent, principal or agent, master or disciple, supreme or subservient, whatsoever you want to say, you can call it. But
Hmm.
it is dealing with only two, you can say a relationship, one relationship, and that is between one is situated at some higher position, and the other is the subject to it. That is what we have to now. It might be taken a little bit in a different way or misinterpreted, that we are talking about subjugation, we are talking about subjects, we are talking about servility. No, we are not talking about that. We are simply talking about a relationship of the one which is known as creator, and the second is created, right? So there is no, you can say, a comparison between the two, and it cannot be a comparison between the two. How can a creator be a created, right? Created is something, uh, something supreme power. It may be an abstract form, but it is supreme in some or other ways. It cannot be compared with the created one. So we are the created one, right?
Yeah.
And the other is the creator. So I'm not saying you have to call it God. You can call it any, scientific mode or scientific, way to produce whatsoever it is,
Natural
right?
force, natural
Or
force.
whatsoever actual force you can say. So it's your personal, you can say, understanding on that, right? So whenever we understand this particular aspect, we understand how it is going to be, I mean, fruitful for the entire humanity. I mean, try to understand this relationship from the other's perspective, that one is considered oneself as someone sitting at the lower side, which also means the previous part that we have discussed is that he's accepting and acknowledging his limitation.
Yeah.
Because when you understand yourself sitting in the lower position or the lower pedestrian, you are calling yourself nothing, which means you are not going to be infused with a pride, with an arrogance, and in fact it's an ethical tool itself.
Yeah.
I mean, apart from the scientific tools important for the ruling, important for governing the entire society, there are ethical rules too, which are equally important. I mean, constitutions provides us a certain kind of instruction as a guideline, and if one fails to follow it, is often penalized with a kind of punishments, right? As mentioned in the constitution. But there are ethical instructions too, and these ethical instructions are given in this, sacred literature, and that is called Dvaitas, Advaitas, right? So the first, interest that is met up by this dualities is that one consider oneself as nothing. And when you consider yourself nothing, it means that you have acknowledged a certain, limitations about you, and that is very important, because it actually hinders your frivolous claims
Yeah.
of proving one's superiority, which is often, done at the cost of the environment. For example, right now people having no belief in God consider themselves to be the supreme power.
Yeah.
And one who considers oneself to the supreme power often reacts in the same way, putting everything at stake. Look at some Western countries and its attitudes. The damage they have done to the environment in the name of, supreme force is almost irreparable.
Yeah.
And therefore this, duality comes and teaches us this master or the disciple, the master, the agent relationship,
Yeah.
because it keeps, everything on check, that this is a limitation and this is what you have to do. If you try to go beyond it, you have to face the consequences and the repercussion of it. People who understand it right from the beginning or in the initial phases of life often deal with the nature very modestly, and that is what is the benefit of it. When you deal with your nearby immediate nature with a certain degree of modesty, and not showing and practicing any sort of exploitative, you know uh, mindsets on it, then obviously it is going to be very fruitful in some or other ways. We are giving hope for the generation to come and enjoy it on this planet like we are doing right now. So we don't see this benefit as a bigger benefit, just because of it is not perceivable with that degree, which is often possible in some other cases. Like when a scientific discovery happens or a scientific invention reaches to its almost final point, and a new invention comes out as a product of ingenuous mindset, it is often perceived as something concrete thing, and therefore we start giving credit to the scientific methods, right? It is not usually, you can say, acceptable in the spiritual world, in the Dvaitas philosophies, because here the benefit is a long term benefit. However, it is not perceived with that degree of with that degree of, sensitivity, because we failed to consider the sensitivity of those nuances of of these particular things, right? Which we call important for the entire humanity. So this is the first, benefit for the entire humanity. The second important, benefit that comes with it is that it checks your ego. Ego has been a villain to the entire human community, isn't it? Because your ego is your total identity. So when you go and read Sigmund Freud's ego, identity, super ego, you will understand that it's your ego which tells you that you are this, and also make puts you under certain, false belief that you are this and that, which is not in reality. And that actually makes you suffer from many, problems. I mean, look at your surroundings nowadays. If not here in India, go to some Western countries. People are suffering from so many uh, noble diseases which haven't been, introduced to the entire world right now, just because of they have taken their minds to that level or to that point, which almost has gone, beyond the controllability or their control. So when you follow this Dvaita's philosophy, you are actually being taught how to control your ego, because your ego is your identity. And when you deal with your identity, in fact, you are dealing with your entire undercurrents having in you. And we all know this very quite, that we all humans are somewhere animals.
Yeah.
You just put the surveillance aside for a while and see yourself, observe ourselves, and we will understand that we are no less than an animal, right? So by ego, we are already declared an animal. But just because of we are living in the society, we have to abide by certain protocols and instructions. Otherwise, we will lose this very identity. So in the name, just for the sake of protecting our identity, we are actually maintaining and pretending to be as human, right? When you understand this Dvaitas and try to apply this to your life, you understand that you are this, and therefore you behave very, sagaciously, and apply your discerning mindset on every occasions where it is required, right? Otherwise, people, those who have lost their control on their ego, become either very exploitative minds or something else. But it is not very much coming to terms with the social standard which is actually required for living in the social system with other humans, right? So these are the important and the valuable lessons which we can learn from, Dvaita's philosophies, right? Over to you.
And one more thing I would like to talk about, actually, what you've just talked about, the ego being the reason of people's, you can say, miserable condition. Why do these fights and quarrels and everything take place? Because we somewhere the ego is coming in the way. For example, you can say in the families, in even in the countries, you can say the war is going on. So what's the reason? Oh, ego is the reason, right? If the ego is taken aside, I mean, if you just put it aside, I think there is no reason to fight. And one more thing I would love to say is this ego is the worst enemy, I would say, of humanity. And why we people are known as humans? Because we've got this discretion. God has given us this discretion.
Mm.
God has given us the intelligence, and using this intelligence, we can decide right from wrong. We can differentiate the things, but the ego is ruling over this intelligence, and it has killed it. It has taken that the ability of a person to
Right.
decide away from him. And that's why, as you said, that we are no less than animals. Yes, we are no less than animals. The only difference is this. So if we, and this Dvaita comes and then teaches us that if we become humble, if we become compassionate towards people, I think this is going to make this world a better place to live. And one more thing I would love to say, this Dvaita also teaches us the ethics, right?
Right.
Because if we want to have a good society, if we want have to have good people in the world, I think we should be following practicing ethics. Why do we need to follow these ethics? Because for example, if a person who deviates from the right path, and then there will be nothing but evil in the society. And this Dvaita comes and teaches us we should be following and practicing, practicing ethics. You see, in even in business world, even in our society, we lay emphasis on ethics, because this is what makes us a society. This is what makes us human. We are not talking about animals having ethics, because they are not made to practice and follow ethics, but people are made to. So tell me how means how this the ethics, especially when it comes to practicing this duality, lays foundation for a better society. Because I think, what I believe is, because if I talk about me, I've always tried hard to teach people ethics, to teach people the correct behavior. I've always talked about appropriate, right? I've always talked about maintaining some degree of respect for the people, because this is what makes a good society. This is what makes us a good human being. And all these together, all these all together going to make this world a better place. And this is going to be a beautiful place for the generation to come, and they would always also be enjoying, and then they would be living their life to the fullest, right? So now tell me, how can the philosophy of Dvaita lays a better foundation, especially for morality, because that's what makes
Mm.
us human beings.
Okay, so the better way to start this very point is to ask a one relevant question in same line, and that is, what is ethic? And then we'll try to understand how it emerges from this Dvaita's philosophies. I mean, ethics is nothing but a set of principles and some rules or instructions, which people usually call the foundation rules on which the human existence is possible or is made possible, right? So you deprive the humans of all these ethics and you will lose the humanity on the very next moment. So this amount of importance these ethics, carry and harbor, right? So therefore, these are abstract by nature. It has no physicalities, by the way, but in value, it's very immense. It's very powerful because it decides and determines the upcoming generations and their possibilities and their existence, right? So, for example, someone is a staunch follower of meeting up with their own commitments as he or she promises, is said to be a follower of certain ethics,
Yeah.
right? Which is very important. So, to be cooperative by nature with people in the society is also a part of ethics. To be full of integrity in all situation is also a part of ethics.
Yeah.
When you don't play deceitfully with other people whom are very close to you and who literally maintain a certain close proximity or proximity relationship with you, you are actually playing ethics. So ethics are a foundational, you can say, a ground that serves you a certain possibilities of humanity to exist further. And that is the importance of ethics, right? Now, the second question comes in the same line, is that how the philosophy, this Dvaita's philosophies, this mind and body philosophy, the Jivan and soul philosophy, gives birth to this ethics. See, there are two things, as we have discussed already earlier, that Dvaita is all about Atman and the Atman and the
Paramatma.
Atman and the Jiva. Jiva
Yeah.
means body.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll not make it complicated for the
Okay.
large audience. So, soul on the one side, which is identified as Atman, and the body,
Body.
which is called Jiva in Hindi, right? Now, body that is related associated to us, so that is in our control, right? So we call it ourself. The other is soul, Atman, which is a part of infinite power that is called supreme leader, right? In Dvaita's philosophies, the very Atman part, the soul part, is affiliated with nature. Since Atman is abstract in nature, okay, and things which govern the entire human existence, which is nature, is also gifted as a blessing to us by the supreme leader. So therefore, this Atman, this soul, is associated and affiliated and linked with this, nature, right? So whenever we treat this soul, you know, or this entire nature around us as a part of God, God's blessing, as a gift of, God to us, then our behavior, attitude towards it becomes less exploitative. And when your behavior becomes, very modest and very calm and comforting, that it, reacts to it in a more, a kind manner, you actually provide a lot of scope for further humanity to develop. And that's how the ethics comes out in this way. So we can say this entire, soul part of the dualism, okay, this the soul part of the dualism, that is the Atman part of the dualism, is often associated with this very nature, right? And nature in itself a god or a creation of the god, right? So therefore, whenever we treat with the nature or the immediate nature, we actually project or display certain ethical, you can say, uh, uh, disposition towards it. So for example, even when we have a lot of power in our hands, we are not going to be exploitative by any means if you are a follower of ethics, right? For example, you have earned a lot of wealth, as what usually happens in most of the case you go to, Europe and America. They often, try to utilize their entire money, hard earned money, even when they literally don't need it, right? So they go on exploitative, attitude. They don't follow this ethics, right? So these are the values of ethics, and in this way it really serves humanity. But apart from this, many people say that since uh, this is our life, and therefore we hold a certain degree of autonomy on it, and it is also our personal choice about the life that we want to live, and therefore we can do all possible things since it is in our control, since there is certain power has already assigned to us, and with this we can do the same thing. Now this kind of mindset often, you can say, violates this kinds of ethical rules in the name of power, in the name of supremacy, just because of the same reasons, because they haven't identified and accepted the very first principle, as we have discussed, is the principle and the master and the principle relationship, because they still call themselves the superior power, because they think they have the positions in their hands and with the powers associated with it, and they can do whatsoever they want according to it, what pleases them, right? Even when it is being a displeasurable to other side, right?
Yeah.
But they go on with that for their own personal pleasure and leads a very hedonistic lifestyle. So it's a clear cut rejection to the Dvaita's philosophies, which actually leads many people to behave immorally and unethically, and therefore you will see a stark difference. In fact, we don't need to, go and skim through the pages every single time. You just go and check the lifestyle of the people. You will see people living in the abroad countries, they are very one believe in living their lavish lifestyle, right? But when you come to India, you will see that yes, people are becoming materialistic, obviously, because we have been governed by the British establishment autonomy for more than 200 years, and around, by other, Portuguese, leaders, or, establishment by 3 to 400 years. We almost have been, you can say, servile for more than 700 years by different kind of political dispensations invaded us, right? So it's an impact of their influence on us still, and for this we have becoming more kind of, Western people, leading with this very Western mindsets, which actually leads us to accept the fact that there is nothing else in the life but to enjoy to the fullest, right? People living in the India, you will see that they maintain a certain ethical values. I mean, Ratan Tata even doesn't belong to this land, but by origin, but he had a certain ethics values because he lived his entire life in India, and therefore he had some impact as an influence on him through these kinds of philosophies. He never used his entire wealth that he had hard earned for their own personal benefits and enjoyment. He actually used it, and he actually did it himself as a trustee for the entire wealth, isn't it? And he discharged his his lifestyle in such a way that actually benefited for the larger people, right? Many examples you will find here in this country, which are very rich and living their aristocratic lifestyle, but they actually do maintain this kind of ethical insight and dispositions towards the nature, which literally gives us a feeling that yes, humanity still survives. So these are the important values and ethical understandings which can be easily developed with the routine practice of the Dvaita's philosophies, because when you read it closely and understand it closely and practice it on a regular basis, you understand those subtle nuanced things and how it could be more influencing to you in many ways. And other benefits are, you can say, even cannot be counted on fingertips, right? Over to you.
And with the globalization, everything is being globalized, whether it's culture or anything. Now, people here in India are also growing more and more hedonistic.
Right,
Leading hedonistic. I mean, they're accepting hedonistic lifestyle. They are becoming more
right,
and
right.
more hedonist. There comes, one thing. This is very much important for us. Dvaita, with its philosophy, uh, as you know that we've got duality. So when a person doesn't follow ethics, so they are kind of becomes at times fearful about the consequences. And this is what is important. There should be something. There should be some force which can control you. And this fear of doing something
Right,
wrong is stopping us. Yeah,
right,
to
right.
be honest,
Absolutely.
we know that people are very, you can say, they know what is right and what is wrong. But when we become successful, to be honest, success, not everybody is able to handle success. Success turns the people's hands. It just goes into people's heads and then make them wavered. And if they when they forget that they are not going to be punished for for their actions or their karmas, then they will be unstoppable. And this philosophy always teaches us that there is some power which is always there to punish you for the wrongdoings. And if you don't follow the ethics, if you don't follow the right things, and if you cheat on people, then you would be facing the music, right? So
Right.
this philosophy teaches us this. One more thing I would like to talk about is how Dvaita's philosophy talks about the limitations of human beings. If we practice this philosophy, do we become dependent on the divine guidance, or something else happens? I just want you to say something about it. Is it forcing us to be dependent on the guidance of the supreme being, or in what ways it teaches us that we are somewhere limited, or this limitation is really needed, especially for the human beings?
Okay, so this is very interesting, part of the discussion, because it gives us a sense that uh, when we are infused with the degree of rationality, and when we have this proper channel of how we could use our discretions on occasions when it really requires us to perform like that, then in that case, why we should consider ourselves a limited force? So this is a very genuine question, and in fact, it is often treated as as a rubbish. I mean, by most of the Western countries, because they treat themselves as a supreme leader for whatsoever they do, because they haven't accepted the existence of God. Accepted few Western scientists who have given their readily acceptance to the God existence, right? So they have given a different names to the supreme power, but they have accepted the very existence of the
Yeah.
supreme power, that is God, right? Now, let us try to check the reason, the possibilities, and the rationalities behind when we say that we are limited. So, does it mean that we are dependent on the God, or does it mean that we are somewhere, hindering ourselves in our own ways and almost closing up? doors for more opportunities that we could grasp in future, right? We have to be very clear on one point, and the point is that first, when we say that we are limited, it means that we are accepting certain boundaries which cannot be crossed by humans at
Yes.
all, right? And that is the point or the line which we are drawing. That's it. And then next question could be in the line is that why we have to draw this line. The thing is that we humans have we discussed already that we are you know uh, this associated with this kind of ego, identity, right? Our ego is very dynamic, right? And when we are not properly channelized by this very idea of limitations, so we'll be becoming a more uncontrollable force, unbridled force, right? And that is going to be very difficult for the entire humanity. So for example, if one scientist comes out with a certain kind of thought or idea that he is supreme to all, and he doesn't believe in this kind of limitation, then possibly he is going to be very deleterious to the entire human, because someday or some or other day he will try to invent a certain kind of technology or certain kind of thing that he could produce which might be very dangerous to the entire humanity, right? That particular invention is only possible only when a person thinks himself to be supreme,
Yeah.
right? So therefore, this limitation of humans ability as a conception is very important for all of us, because it actually gives us an understanding how humans life is important, existence is important
Yeah.
on this planet for survival, right? Because your one silly action can cost you millions of people's life. As what happened in COVID-19, it was just a slight, research process that happened in some labs of the Chinese government, of the Chinese country, right? And what amount of, damage it did to the entire humanity is often, is I think, is once in a millennia, right?
Yeah.
Because it was purely guided by this one egoistic mindset that we are the one and can do all possible things. So this is one strong reason which I consider for why we should call ourselves a limited force. The second strong reason is that we it also checks us on many occasions, that when we start gaining a certain interest or certain kind of advantages in life, and we all of a sudden reach to a certain phase or some higher order of life, we start becoming a more arrogant. And this arrogance, when is displaced in the society, it literally does a lot of emotional, you can say, tortures to many of the people. And that is very important to be regulated. And if we don't do this, the entire emotional system of the society would break down. Because if there is anything which is sustaining humanity, is the emotional stability of a person. Your emotional sustainability breaks down, you are going to be completely collapsed. And that is the reality, right? So this very limitation as an idea, as a concept, is very important, right? So this this limitation is not all about your so-called dependency on God, or even you can consider it as a so-called as a dependency on supreme power. I
Hmm.
mean, I mean, I mean, if we say that there are certain limitations which is beyond humans' ability, there are certain things which is beyond human abilities, then what is wrong to accept it?
Yeah.
In fact, in other ways, we are, unburdening ourselves with frivolous kind of pressure and stress, right? So these are the things which we have to taken it very seriously, and understand the uh, the rationality behind it rather than challenge it, right? It's not always good to challenge everything that comes to us to prove our authority. And this limitations, humans ability as a concept comes here to teach us the same way. Yes.
And there is no harm in accepting the reality, You know that no matter how advanced the technology has become, but we cannot stop the earthquakes. We cannot stop, uh,
Oh,
the calamities, natural calamities. We can mitigate
we can mitigate.
because we can get the warning, and you can keep ourselves ready for to face those kind of challenges. But you cannot stop them, and this shows that there is some force which is regulating the entire universe and the entire world. And if we accept the reality, then there is nothing wrong, because we already know we've tried to do so many things, but we haven't succeeded in all those
Right.
endeavors of our life. And this clearly shows and indicates that there are certain, you can say, certain things, certain areas of life which we can never control, right? We have control, as we talked about, that we can control our behavior, we can control our actions, but we can not control the nature. Nature is God, and nature is supreme power. Nature is everything, and you can give it any name, or you can call it by any name, but it is the reality. And this is what the philosophy of Dvaita teaches us. And so this is what we had to discuss in the whole
And
episode.
then one more thing I want to say, that we are sitting on the planet
Yeah.
called a blue planet, and it is insignificant to the vast infinite space. Then how we can consider ourselves as the authority? And if we consider ourselves authority, then at least we need to present some consequential and rational grounds to
Yeah.
support that very fantasy and figments that you carry with yourself, right? Because when you see the entire space, you won't see Earth is either existing anywhere, right? So it is very insignificant. I mean, when you try to see the entire black
This earth is
space,
just like the mother, is just the size of mustard seed in the whole universe.
absolutely
There are thousands of thousands galaxies in
thousands
the
and
universe.
thousands of galaxies,
And we are no, you can
multi-universe,
see
parallel
what
universe.
size we are. We are
Uh,
nothing actually. So
yeah,
how can we deny this fact that
right,
there is no existence of God? Yes,
mm,
and this is what this philosophy teaches us. And so here we know through our podcast we are not going to say that which one is better actually. Whatever the philosophy that suits to you, you can go with that. All those philosophy which we have talked
right,
about are going to make your life better, and you can become a better human being, and you
right,
would be contributing to this to the betterment of the whole society and the whole world and the universe. And this is how we can be of use to this
right.
entire humanity, right? So with this, I'm going to take a leave, and I want the audience to watch the video,
Yeah,
the full no full video, so that
right,
they can get some lessons, and they can get some information which is going to be useful to for them and for the people who are around them. And they will also be infusing, or you can say they'll be diffusing the positivity around them. And
right,
the um, whole life of theirs is going to be a kind of example for others to follow. Right, with this,
right.
I'm taking a leave. I'll see you in the next podcast. See
Okay,
you.
bye.
Bye.
Bye.